let's move on and talk about our second manager on today's manager profiling podcast. We're going to drop down a division that is very, very competitive and has a number of terrific managers in it. One of them who's fairly new to League One is Ryan Lowe. Of course, got off to a terrific start in his managerial career with Bury. He now finds himself at Plymouth Argyle. He's kept them up. He's done a good job this season, and he'll be looking to kick on in the 2021-2022 campaign. Now, Ryan Lowe, Mike, I feel as though I don't know a lot about his personality type because a lot of the spotlight is put on his style of football, his attacking, gung-ho, high-pressing style of football, which has been likened to Liverpool, and he has been praised by Jurgen Klopp for it. But I feel as though that is often the main focus whenever we read about Ryan Lowe, and actually knowing a bit more about the man himself is something that is quite hard to uncover.
Yeah, well, I found this season to be the most interesting season of three that I've been following Ryan Lowe. I think the promotion seasons, he was very set in his ways. I want to play this certain brand of football. I want to do this a certain way, and I'm going to stick by my guns until the players get it, and then it kicks into gear later in the season. This year's been a change, and I think he's very much about status, and I think it's a big deal. We talk on previous podcasts about the step up from League Two to League One not being that great. I think in Lowe's mind, and I guess you could look at his career as well. His playing career was mostly in League Two, partly in League One, and very little Championship football. And I think he's very conscious of status. Status is a big thing for him, and I think it's a big step up in his mind into League One now. And he's kind of changed his shape more often this season and started a bit more of an experimental feel. And I think that potentially Plymouth lost a bit of that identity, which was why, towards the end of the season, it did get really difficult. It was a really solid first half of the season for the most part. But once they got into a rut, I felt like it was starting to find out more about Ryan Lowe's actual personality in them difficult moments than we had done previously.
So what do you think the main reason behind that rut was, in terms of, you're talking about change of system and tinkering? He's been very faithful to the system that has served him so well. Was that a lack of confidence on his part, or was he second guessing himself, or was he just, I don't know, did he realize that, at the level above, you just can't be so dedicated to one particular system?
I think there's an awareness, first of all. I mean, there's something he repeats several times throughout the season is, at League Two, you don't get punished for these mistakes. At League One, you do, and that's the major difference. And that's fair comment. You hear plenty of managers say that, but I just think he's fallen into. I don't want to say fallen into a trap like it's been a bad season, because it's been a solid first 2/3 of the campaign. But he's because he's aware of status. He's always got one eye over the fence on what other teams are doing and what other people are doing. And I think more this season, rather, it's like, no, we're Plymouth in League Two. We don't care what anyone else does. We play our way. I think this season he's been more accommodating. He's been tweaking tactics from game to game because of the opposition, worrying about opposition threats more. And it's this step up in his own mind that we've gone from League Two to League One now. Now I've got things to worry about. Now I'm going to, just tinker with things a little bit more from week to week. Potentially, as the season wore on, that maybe began to unsettle his players a little bit, or there was a lack of continuity and identity. The identity was already there previously, but the lack of continuity, few bad results go your way and the manager starts tweaking things and playing with things. By definition, that can be undermining. That, suddenly we've been built and brought up on this, we play this certain way and we don't change for nobody, to suddenly this season, well, we'll make this compromise here and we'll make a compromise there because it's this team, it's that team. And I just think there's a little bit of that coming to play as the season's gone on. And then towards the end of the campaign, he's kind of lost it with his players a few times because he wants them to step up and kind of solve their own problems to some degree in some of these games. He gives them a game plan, but then he's talking about individual errors creeping in. And that being a big, a big reason. He's talking about looking at moments in games where things have gone wrong. But I think it might be something a little bit more holistic.
He feels very adaptable, though, and he feels like he's a learner. He picks up clues and he works with things. So this entire campaign in League One, where Plymouth were never really worrying about relegation because of how they started the season, maybe he will be able to kick on from this, and particularly maybe that experimentation just helps him work out a few things for the summer.
Yeah, well, I think recruitment's possibly going to be vital for Plymouth more than most clubs. And this will be a big thing for Lowe to go from, because he's had a very clear idea about the players he wants to bring in, when he was at Bury, and then he comes in at Plymouth, and before it became apparent towards the end of the season that he was talking about 7 or 8 players only in contract, and that these players are playing for the futures, and the season kind of ended in such a way that if that was the carrot, playing for your futures, well, a run of 7 or 8 defeats in your last 10 games is not the way to earn yourself a new contract. So I'm from the outside looking in, listening to some of the things that Ryan Lowe's been saying about his players in the last 2-3 months of the season, thinking, right, well, a lot of these players he can't go into battle with again next season, that, a lot of players are going to have to be let go, and there is going to have to be a new recruitment policy. So I think the quality of that recruitment will be key to whether Argyle can kick on next term, because I think this was a necessary thing anyway, because of the fact that the message has changed slightly as the season's gone on tactically. And if he wants to play, he's possibly got halfway through the season himself with players of League One calibre, League Two calibre, that have proven League Two calibre, but the jury's out a little bit in League One. And he has started tinkering, because he's thinking, some of these players aren't necessarily up to the level to play the way I want to play. Now, if he's got this clear idea in mind of the way he wants to play, and halfway through the season kind of made more and more compromises that he would normally make, then now it's about the quality of the recruitment. Now it has to be players that are good enough to plug in and play this way he wants to play. And next season might be almost the counter of this season, where they don't necessarily start brilliantly, but get better and better and better as the season goes on.
One thing he relies on is width. And one thing he does tend to do is improve or bring out the best in strikers. Now, of course, being a striker himself and scoring a hatful of goals in the EFL will help, but we don't always see this, do we? Great strikers don't always turn into great attacking managers. But Ryan Lowe got the best out of Nicky Maynard after a fruitless spell in Scotland. And this season, Luke Jepcott, who was playing his trade, several divisions down before coming into the Plymouth side, has also really kicked on. So, yeah, clearly in the final third, he knows what he's doing. But do you think perhaps he needs some assistance further back? Do you think defence is a bit of a blind spot, because that's something you never really encountered as a player?
Quite possibly. I mean, it makes sense that I'd not made the connection actually, strongly, that, him being a former striker, and, you look at Jeffcott's goals and that there's probably an element of coaching specifically from Lowe there in a hands-on way, that possibly, his support staff, do a lot more of the coaching, between games. What I would say is, what I've learned about Lowe from a personality angle is that what defined his career for me was not necessarily the fact he was a striker that scored goals, but was the fact that how aware he was of dressing room dynamics. He talked in one interview about, when they were playing Sheffield United in the FA Cup this season, I remember there was an interview with, asking him about Alan Nill, who used to be his manager, who's assistant to Chris Wilder at the time, used to be his manager at Bury, and him not getting the captaincy, how that was a big deal for him. And he could tell it was like, and he gave the captaincy to Steve Schumacher, his assistant, and not Ryan Lowe. And you could tell the way that he delivered it almost in the interview, that he's like, as if it's a joke now, but you could tell it still stings even now that he was overlooked for the captaincy and Schumacher got it instead. Now, there's no hard feelings with Schumacher, but this is something that obviously hurt Lowe at the time. Now, he's all about these dressing room dynamics. He understands. He talks about me and Shuey. I was made vice captain, and me and Shuey pulled the group together and did a good job for Nil, in terms of making sure that group was tight, that any little elements of friction potentially between certain players were nipped in the bud. Everybody was hitting certain standards in training every day. And these are the things that he's very conscious of. He's very conscious of these dynamics and status within a group, and the group culture and the collective, and who deserves the responsibility to be treated almost like a senior member, and who should know their place as a junior member of the squad and should almost be servants to the senior. And all these little dynamics are, this is what's interesting with Lowe, in that this is what colours me as his personality now, more than the fact that he was a striker and, you know, his coaching being from a striker's perspective. I think it's about surrounding himself with the right people on the coaching level and him really understanding these dynamics in a dressing room.
So I guess if someone like Jack is, you know, coming back to the club after a loan spell and they've applied themselves well and they're prepared to dig in and know that they are, you know, only a young player who's learning their trade and not get above their station, I guess they're ideal, are they, for Lowe? Because it seems like what he doesn't want is, you know, a cocksure 18-year-old who thinks he's the best player in the squad coming in and potentially disrupting the harmony.
Yeah, he won't take well to that. He would. I don't think he'd ever take well to a young player coming in and thinking, you know, they were Billy Big Boots. So he would. Yeah, I think that is a big thing. But I think he also knows, as part of this, you know, he talks a lot about earning your spurs and things like this. You know, Jeff Cox earned respect now. He'll gradually, more than an average player of his age, will be just given bit more privilege in terms of the way he's treated and dealt with and respected because he's delivered. So it's not necessarily, you know, you're still a tender age, so this is the way you get treated. It's like, no, you earn you earn this place in the dressing room, and it's not necessarily age is determinant. It might be the starting point, but it's important to Lowe to have what I would look for potentially is the ages of the squad. That there is a clearly defined group of peak age players, possibly even one or two veterans in the 30s. Then there's a middle group, and then there's the young bucks who are coming through trying to prove themselves. But it's those are the kinds of dynamics. And when you're looking at recruitment, it will be interesting to see those status dynamics of who comes in, because if there's too many senior players or too many young guns and not enough in between or anything like that, I think it would be harder to manage, and I just don't think Lowe would naturally gravitate towards that. I think he'd look for more of a spread, but it's something he's very conscious of. Is, you know, he doesn't treat every player the same way, I would say, in a dressing room. I think you treated on merit of performances, but also on seniority and experience and track record as well.
I guess we might see some senior players come through the door then this summer, because Gary Sawyer's retired, Luke McCormick's retired as well, though he's staying at the club in another role. But like you say, the balance then, I guess, we talked last week on the podcast about Keith Hill and his dismissal at Tranmere and how, you know, potentially he doesn't necessarily like working with too many senior players because, you know, they have their opinions, they have their ways of playing, and they can't be molded and sculpted. I guess Ryan Lowe doesn't mind these senior players, but at the end of the day, yeah, he'll want a fine balance.
Yeah, I think he'll want to choose them. You know, I think he wants to choose who his senior players are, and once he knows he can trust the senior player, then he loves the senior player because they carry the message onto the training. You know, when that manager's not around, then he can trust those senior pros to be setting the right tone for the rest of the group. And it's a lot easier to manage just a handful of senior pros. You know, you can almost have team meetings with just 3 or 4 players and know that the message is going to get through to the rest of the squad potentially. You know, this sense of hierarchy within a club can be really helpful for someone of Lowe's type to have these clear channels that the way information filters out. And it's not necessarily on him to constantly deliver the answers to individuals or things like that. So I think, yeah, is the big thing is the element of trust and knowing that he can trust those players and that they've got his back. One very interesting thing he's talked about as well that leads me to this, to understanding the way that he does this and the way he understands this. He talks about Scouse managers and how Scouse managers all have the back. For him, that's a subculture, that's a subgroup. He identifies with being a Scouser, and there happens to be quite a few Scouse managers in the EFL at the moment, and it's a big thing for him that Paul Cook picks up the phone when things aren't going well, that Joey Barton picks up the phone when things aren't going well, that Jurgen Klopp, even though he's such a busy man with this, you know, such a huge football club, and you think of everything that he's got on his plate, still takes the time out to put his arm around Ryan Lowe's shoulder and just say, keep doing what you're doing great, and, you know, make him feel like, you know, the certain way he's doing things is all worthwhile. So this is, you know, he's even within the context of the LMA, within the context of playing in the Football League or having that, he still finds a subculture within that that has an even stronger bond than just being another manager. So it's about building strong bonds in smaller groups with like subcultures within a whole culture. And that's possibly the best way I can explain what he would want from senior players, is to have each other's back the way that Scouse managers have each other's backs.
Yeah, John Coleman and Carl Robinson in that division as well. So like you say, there are plenty of them. He's been linked, Ryan Lowe, with plenty of jobs in the Championship. He's been touted for some of them as well, but as things stand, he's still at Plymouth. And I think most people could probably agree that, walking into that Sheffield Wednesday job, of which he was linked with, I think would probably have not been a good thing for him personally, and maybe also for the club as well, because it probably feels like he's not quite ready. But definitely, Mike, he can manage at a higher level, can't he?
I would think so, yeah. Over time, I think we're learning more about him now in this period, and we're going to learn even more next year. Like I say, it's all about status. He's got 2 League Two promotions on his CV. He's got that level boxed. He can take any job in League Two now in the future, and he will go into that job. I'm going to get promotion at this level. We're now seeing at League One level, and it's interesting with Plymouth in the sense that Plymouth have been this club that I remember as a statistic that fascinated me last summer, that you have to go back to 1985 for the last time that Plymouth finished in the middle third of what is now League One. They either jumped straight up to the Championship or they dropped 2 levels back down to League Two. And they seem to have spent nearly all of this time in the Championship and League Two. Now they've got a manager in Ryan Lowe who's very sensitive to the shift in status at League One level. And he's going to want to do things incrementally. He's not going to be a manager that shoots for the stars. I do think the Sheffield Wednesday job would have been too much too soon for him. And I think next season's about, I think this season, did they just finish outside? I think they finished in the bottom 8 in the end, didn't they? So they've still not had this. This could be a big thing for Plymouth next season, to take a solid step forward into that mid-table position and feel like they belong there. I think it's really important to Ryan Lowe to feel like he believes he belongs, and the players, he can trust them enough and believe that they belong at the level that they're playing at. And I think just a little bit the way that this season ended, that belief isn't entirely there yet. So he's got to stamp that, approval, that sense of like, yeah, this is where we belong. We're a solid League One club now, and we should be looking at the top 6 next season. I don't get that impression from him right now. And I think if you were to just pick him up out of Plymouth Argyle and drop him at a Championship club, I think the similar concerns would play out there as well. I think it's going to be step by step, and he, it's the next step is solid mid-table League One, then looking ahead to the top 6. In terms of Championship, becoming a Championship manager, you might be talking a good few years down the line yet.